So this is some of Julio Gonzalez's early jewelry work. This is honestly a lot of pieces that he would have made and sold to kind of support himself early on in his career. He didn't super take off artistically until he was a little bit older in his life. So he was born in Barcelona and he died in France, which is pretty artistic sounding to me. He was 66 when he passed. His father was a metal worker and had a fabrication shop. So actually, a lot of the fences that you see around Barcelona were made by him and his father's shop. He studied painting at first, as we all do. This is kind of one of his very early student works on the right here. His first embossed work was in 1900, and then he first welded iron in 1927. So this is again later on in his life. So sometimes you don't find your favorite techniques until later on, which is always okay. And if you're kind of an art history buff or someone that pays attention in class a little bit, Spain and the early 1900s and art might sound a little familiar to you. Yes, he was friends with Picasso. So on the left we have Daphne, which is a piece by him that's cast bronze and is about 4.5 feet tall without the base. And over here on the right, we have Bathers, which are various sizes and pieces by Pablo Picasso, um, made in 1906. So this is kind of earlier on, but as you can see, the ties and inspirations. Um, and they had quite the friendship and relationship. They had some falling outs. They went to school together, um, but ultimately they Picasso, after making Metaphoric Bather, really wanted to dive into his sculpture career and kind of reached out to Julio again since he's a little bit older than Picasso, and they started collaborating and making a lot of pieces together, and bringing abstraction and cubism to the sculptural world. So Daphne's actually a cubist take on a Bernini sculpture, and as you can kind of see the upward movement, and almost very similar silhouettes between the two pieces, even though Gonzalez's work is a very abstracted stretch of the piece on the left. So forging metal, that's a technique that Gonzalez would have used a lot, which really just refers to the manipulation and bending um, of metal into certain shapes by force. So this can be done through cold processes, which is just hammering and using an anvil, technically even bending the metal back and forth. And then there's hot processes as well, where you can heat the metal. This gives it further elasticity, the kind of be able to stretch and curve it, manipulate it even further, which we can see with this man making this lovely rose. So La Couple is a forged iron piece by Gonzalez, the first one he made in 1927. While it's kind of abstracted, it's still very figurative. We can see little faces carved into it as well. And again, for you art history people, yes, that Etruscan sarcophagus spouses piece as well is what that's calling back to. Um, Even I'm just going to flip. No, I can't flip back through the recording, but just their faces again are just very similar expressions. So, welding metal is something that if you haven't done in the shop already, you're going to do a lot of this semester. It's just the marriage between two metals, and we use MIG welding a lot in the shop. That's what I do typically the most, which is just an electrical arc that's created through the tip of your welding and your metal that will have this heat and make them fuse together. So we're going to move forward and see this copper repose piece. It's leaning head, very early on Gonzalez work. So again, just examples of forging. But then moving on in 1934, head called a tunnel, which is made in steel, is like a super abstracted idea of this head. So again, forging would have been present with how he got that cylinder, and the welding with all the like marriage of these metals together. Um, Moving forward, we have head, which is wrought iron, which was made in 1935, so a year later, which is an even further abstraction of all these concepts. So, like, we still have the basic shapes that kind of maybe suggest a head, but really without the title, it's kind of a stretch. Casting metal, like Jenny said, we might be able to do this this year, maybe not, depending on how this like virus wants to handle itself. Not very well, but we'll see. Um, right, but so like you make a sand mold and you pour the molten metal into it and break that mold away, and then you have your object afterwards. We'll probably do like little resin castings or maybe some cold castings. I know she's got a couple like little lesson plans for that moving forward. Um, this is woman and mirror is basically what these both translate to, made in 1934, which would have been some casted components and then further welded together. These are like super abstracted ideas of women with a mirror, right? But that little oval shape kind of suggests that's a mirror. Woman in the Mirror is the same titled illustration. So again, even though he's like very sculptural, he's still illustrating throughout all of his life. This is like a collage, an India ink kind of pastel piece made in 1937. Moving forward, we have this repetition of like continuing the ideas. So this is Woman in the Mirror again. And then I have a different view of it as well. And just the like shadows on the like wall really like tie back to these illustrations that he kind of uses. Sometimes the sculptures are created first, sometimes the illustrations are created first. And it's just interesting how you can see the different like ideas through different mediums. This is Torso, which is a forged and weld iron piece made in 1936. Again, just showing him using different techniques. Cactus Man 1, which is what the illustration is basically titled as well, is a cast bronze and iron nails piece made in 1939. So this is very similar to Picasso's Guitar Man, and really again just like abstracted. We kind of see the hat present, which lets us know it's a man, but we also have all the spikes, which are they the leg of the man, are they the cactus, this cubism idea of a man and a cactus. I kind of like this one a little bit better. I actually found a site talking about Julio Gonzalez that was some woman's blog relating viewing his work to doing yoga, like taking breaths in and out of the negative space you're viewing, which I thought was just a really interesting concept. And I feel like really well executed through this piece as we see the little like lines and repetition, but like through positive and negative and nails all within the piece. So Julio Gonzalez was also alive for the Spanish Civil War. Again, Picasso, Civil War, right? So this was a huge war of ideologies that was very physically brutal, with the fascists taking over the Republic. There was many responses from artists such as Julio Gonzalez himself, kind of taking a turn away from all the abstraction we saw before and tying back into realism. So La Monsa it's like the little mountain range area that he's from, but it's also like what women from that area would have been called. So this is his like peasant woman and really like victims during the Spanish Civil War, putting a face to all these people that have been destroyed throughout this. This one is welded in wrought iron. And again, he's like constantly using these ideas through different mediums. So we have like the Mask of Monsieur, which is like a bronze lost wax piece on the left, and also Screaming Head with a white veil is on the right. Head of Monsieur II is a bronze cast. This is a very famous Julio Gonzalez piece. If you've heard of him before, this is probably what you've seen. Again, just like true display of human agony, and I think that's why he had to move away from the cubism to really capture the emotions he felt after this war. Was giving a face to these victims and people rather than having it like float around an abstract theory world. This piece was actually cast after his death from a plaster that was found in his studio. So these are some of my sources that I'm displaying for you guys now. Um, and this is just one final piece, reclining figure. It was from 1934. I just want to thank you guys for your time and listening to my little slideshow here.